Breaking news today. Israel has rejected U.S. calls for a humanitarian pause, insisting that hostages be freed first. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Friday, "We are going full steam ahead, unless the hostages held by Hamas are released," dismissing U.S. calls for a humanitarian pause in the Israel-Hamas war. Blinken is currently in Israel for the third time since the conflict broke out a month ago and will be meeting with Jordanian officials on Saturday. Hassan Nasrallah, leader of the Iranian-backed Hezbollah militant group in Lebanon, said in a public speech that his organization would not be deterred by U.S. warnings to stay out of the war despite concerns that the conflict could spread to neighboring regions. However, he stopped short of saying Hezbollah would engage fully in the war. On Friday, Israeli troops drew even closer to Gaza City and began striking specific militant cells within the city. According to the Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza, the number of Palestinian casualties in the Israel-Hamas conflict has risen to 9,227. More than 140 Palestinians have been killed in violence and Israeli raids in the occupied West Bank. There have been over 1,400 deaths in Israel, the majority of them occurring in the initial Hamas attack on October 7. Additionally, 242 hostages have been taken from Israel into Gaza. Since Wednesday, when the United States, Egypt, Israel, and Qatar, who mediates with Hamas, reached an apparent agreement, roughly 1,100 people have left the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing. The United States, according to an official, thinks a pause in fighting is what's needed to get the hostages released by Hamas. U.S. Capitol. When it comes to getting the more than 200 hostages released by Hamas in Gaza, it appears that Israel and the United States are taking different approaches. U.S. officials believe a fairly significant pause in the fighting is necessary to facilitate their release, as was the case with the release of 2 American hostages last month, according to a senior Biden administration official who spoke to reporters on Friday. According to the official, who spoke anonymously in accordance with White House policy, negotiations on a larger package of hostages are ongoing, and the release served as a testing pilot for how a larger deal could be struck. The official emphasized it would require a significant halt in fighting to ensure their safety. Israel wants to increase pressure on Hamas and force the militant group's hand, so it has insisted that hostage releases come first. According to a senior U.S. official, Hamas attempted to have wounded fighters added to the list of approved Palestinian refugees. U.S. Capitol. According to a senior Biden administration official, Hamas tried to sneak some of its wounded fighters onto a list of people approved to pass from Gaza into Egypt at the Rafah crossing, which slowed down this week's effort to evacuate hundreds of foreign nationals and dozens of seriously injured Palestinians. Under White House guidelines, the official who briefed reporters on Friday in Washington spoke on the condition of anonymity. In exchange for allowing some injured Palestinians to cross into Egypt for medical treatment, Hamas agreed to allow foreign nationals out of Gaza. A number of the wounded Palestinians were identified by Egyptian authorities as possible Hamas militants, the U.S. official said. Including Hamas fighters on the list, the official said, was unacceptable to Egypt, the United States, and Israel. After some time, Hamas removed the injured militants from the list, and the official said that dozens of badly injured Palestinians were allowed to leave with foreign nationals. The people of Gaza are in dire need of food and water, according to a United Nations official. On Friday, the director of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in Gaza said that the chant of Maya, Maya, water, water, could be heard throughout the streets of Gaza. As Thomas White put it, having traveled the length and breadth of Gaza in the last few weeks, it is a scene of death and destruction. According to him, nobody feels safe anywhere anymore. Everyone is worried about the future and whether or not they will have enough money to feed their families. White, speaking in a video briefing to diplomats from the United Nations' 194 member nations, said that UNRWA is providing support to approximately 89 bakeries across Gaza in an effort to provide bread to 1.7 million people. He claimed that the average Gazan subsists on 2 slices of Arabic bread per day, baked with flour that the United Nations had stored there. However, now people are beyond looking for bread. It's on the hunt for water, he explained. UN Humanitarian Coordinator for the Palestinian Territories and Deputy Middle East Coordinator Lynn Hastings said that only one of 3 water supply lines from Israel is functional and that many people are relying on brackish or saline groundwater, if at all. People are waiting in long lines outside bakeries, some of which have closed due to a lack of fuel, despite the threat of airstrikes, she said. As a result of the current situation in Gaza, Honduras has recalled its ambassador to Israel. Honduras capital Tegucigalpa, on Friday, as part of its condemnation of what it called genocide and other serious violations of international law in the Israel-Hamas war, Honduras recalled its ambassador to Israel for consultations. The Central American country's Foreign Affairs Minister Eduardo Enrique Reina wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, that President Xiomara Castro had decided to immediately recall the ambassador in light of the serious humanitarian situation the civilian Palestinian population is suffering in the Gaza Strip. According to a statement released by the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Honduras energetically condemns the genocide and serious violations of international humanitarian law that the civilian Palestinian population is suffering in the Gaza Strip. As the first female president of Honduras, leftist Castro took office in January 2022 and has since sought to align with other leftist governments in the hemisphere like Venezuela and Cuba without completely alienating the United States.